Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Daniel Dankwitz. I'm the TaylorMade Tours Manager at Rockjumper Birding Tours. We are just getting started here this evening. We've just hit start and record, and the number of attendees is growing quite quickly. We'll just wait, give a few more seconds to allow people to join, and then I will begin with the introduction of our speaker today, Dr. Rob Williams, joining us from the UK. We'll just give a few more moments, but welcome to this next episode of the Rockjumper Dream Destination series. For those who are just joining, my name is Dr. Daniel Keith Dankwitz. I'm the TaylorMade Tours Manager at Rockjumper Birding Tours, and I'm tuning in tonight live from South Africa, a sunny Johannesburg here in South Africa. And tonight we have Rob Williams joining us from the UK. Rob will be sharing his extensive experience around Central Peru with us today. We still have a fair number of attendees who are joining. So just before I get into the formal introduction for Rob, please allow me to advise that we have a number of upcoming Dream Destination episodes spanning the next few months. Later in March, I will be teaming up with TV presenter stemming from the UK, Nigel Marvin, and together we are going to be showcasing the incredible riches of Madagascar. Although we have covered Madagascar previously on one of our Dream Destination episodes, we will be taking a slightly different look at Madagascar. So we invite you to join us on the 26th of March. On the 23rd of April, then Lev Frid, one of our senior tour leaders, will be showcasing Guatemala, an incredibly rich and exciting destination. Guatemala has just changed in leaps and bounds in recent years, and it's become far more accessible. And some really, really top birds can be seen within Guatemala. So we're very excited to hear what Lev has to share with us in April. In May, then, David Hodnott is going to be introducing Cameroon. Now, Cameroon is another incredibly exciting destination. It has only recently become safe to revisit Cameroon. And excitedly, we've got one of our first tours happening as I speak. So we're really, really excited to be traveling back to Cameroon, a really top Central African birding destination. Features such incredible species as the grey-necked rockfowl, all of the Mount Kupi and Mount Cameroon endemics. So a really, really exciting destination. And then finally, in June, our managing director, Keith Valentine, is going to be hosting a special webinar on Birding Direct, Rockjumper's sister company. And Birding Direct is a platform through which we will connect you directly to our trusted local birding leaders all around the world. And we facilitate communications, but it's a platform through which you can really get the best of local birding. Now, on to our speaker tonight, Dr. Rob Williams. Rob is an extremely experienced tropical ecologist and birder with a deep passion for the New World tropics. He has lived in South America for upwards of 15 years, first in Ecuador and later in Peru. So, Rob really is our Peru expert, and we're really, really excited to see what he has to share with us this evening. And Rob has further explored and guided birding tours all across the seven continents, amassing a world life list of just over 6,500 species. So, an incredibly experienced world birder. He comes from a background in zoology and has attained a PhD in conservation ecology. Rob has dedicated his entire career to wildlife conservation, and his primary passion is birds and birding. And he has worked for such leading organizations as the RSPB International, BirdLife International, the Wildlife Conservation Society, and the Frankfurt Zoological Society. So he comes with a wealth of experience behind him. His contributions to ornithology include 4 separate books on birds and birding, alongside numerous scientific articles. Rob is also actively involved in various conservation and research projects on several species, including the Andean condor, white-winged guan, Andean bear, maned wolf, and the giant otter. And he serves as the scientific director of the award-winning Chapari Reserve, Peru's first community-owned private conservation area, where his work continues to drive impactful conservation efforts. This month, Rob is taking us on a virtual tour of Central Peru, showcasing some of South America's most sought after species. We're going to tour through lush cloud forests and expansive Andean grasslands. And I'm sure Rob's going to share with us some incredible Peruvian landscapes, which are home to an astonishing array of bird life. During his talk, Rob will certainly showcase some of the region's most sought-after species, including the Golden-backed Mountain Tanager, Rufous-browed Hemispingus, Junin Grebe, Creamy-bellied Antwren, and the Fiery-throated Metaltail. So, Rob, with that, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm really excited to see what you have to share with us today, and I will pass you over.
Great. Thank you very much, Dan, for that fabulous introduction. Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, or good morning, wherever you are in the world. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today talking about my second home, Peru, and especially this amazing area that is Central Peru with these incredible Andean endemics, many of which have tiny world ranges, which you find amidst spectacular scenery. So here we go. So Peru is located on the west side of South America. Here in the satellite image looking north, you can see Lake Titicaca in the middle of the Andes at the bottom. That's the southern border of Peru, and then the Andes going away up the Peruvian coast. So we're looking at that amazing range of mountains that then go from the coast over and into the Amazon basin. This is Peru, because of this amazing geography and its location in the tropics, in the New World tropics, the near tropics being the bird continent. It has a staggering 1,922 species on the IOC list, and 1,880 have already been recorded in eBird, which includes 118 endemics and 136 near endemics. For Central Peru, the diversity is not as high as some of the other areas like northern and southern Peru, the tours we do there. But the number of endemics is what really is attractive. There are about 50 endemic species available on this tour, which obviously can be seen nowhere else because they're endemic. So this is the current route we use for the tour. We ran this tour for the first time last year, and we made a couple of little lodges as a result of it. And so this is now the route we're using. So one of the big problems with Central Peru is it's one of the highest areas, the Andean mountains here, with summits reaching up to nearly 6,000 meters and passes at mid 4,000s that you have to go over. This creates a challenge, obviously, for the visiting birder. So how we've tackled that is we fly from the capital Lima up to near the north end of the route to the city of Huánuco. We take an internal flight on the second morning of the tour to Huánuco. And from there, we've designed this route so it gradually takes you up in altitude so that you can acclimatize through the duration of the tour, so that this is no problem. And we did this last year, and yes, there were some days where walking was a bit hard work, but no one suffered any negative effects from altitude. And so this seems to be the way to do this area. The conventional way of driving up from Lima, in my opinion, causes a high risk of altitude problems for people, and so we avoid that. And so this is we're going to drive about 1,500 kilometers over the 15 days of the tour. That's the sort of main travel route. There'll be a bit more than that with the birding, but it shows it's an average of about 100 kilometers a day, something like that. But it is on montane roads with, the straight bits are not very common. So it is quite a lot of driving, but it's the only way to get to these amazing places. And here you can see how the altitude or the elevation progresses with the through the tour, with the highest point, the Ticlio Pass, being on day 15 of the tour instead of day 2 or 3, as many other routes, typically leaving Lima, would do it. And so we're building up in elevation as we move through the tour, allowing everyone plenty of time to acclimatize. So the tour, yeah, we fly into Huánuco, and the first afternoon, well, second afternoon, but the first full day of the tour, we go straight off and we look for the Panau antpitter. We saw this was a bird we saw on the tour last year, and it was Rock Jumper's 10,000th bird as a company, which was quite nice. This is one of the newly described species that have come out of the fragmentation of the Rufous antpitter complex. So Rufous antpitter used to be Rufous antpitter with 2 sister species, chestnut and bicolored. Now they comprise 16 species in total, of which 9 can be found in Peru and 5 are available on this tour, including several of the recently described ones. And so that will be the first afternoon. Then we move to the area, the fabulous Bosque Unchog, one of my favorite birding sites in the Andes near there. And a nice field breakfast as at dawn in Bosque Unchog. And this is the kind of scenery. You've got these amazing areas of stunted elfin forest interspersed with open puna grasslands. And wetlands in the valley bottom, etc. And this is home to a whole range of really special species. Coppery metaltail, an endemic hummingbird to Peru, only found in these high elevation eastern Andean forests, is quite common here. There's white-chinned thistletail, here of the Plengii subspecies, which is possibly deserving of being a future split. Maybe there's a bit more work to do on that. One of the big flagship endemics here is the fabulous Golden-backed Mountain Tanager. This is a very scarce and local species found only at a few sites in the eastern Andes, and it ranges widely, so it's a bit of a challenge to find, but we'll put in a good day's effort birding these forest fragments and looking for and listening for the distinctive calls of this fabulous large mountain tanager. While we're looking, we should get more common birds like Ocracius-breasted flycatcher and the rather strange Pardusco, which is in its own genus, monotypic genus, this very small tanager that wanders around sort of walking on the canopy of these bushes. Another particularly sought after and quite tricky bird to find here is the fabulous Rufous-browed Hemispingus, which can be easily overlooked, but hopefully with a bit of luck we should find it. At a bit lower elevation than the Unchog forest, but in the same area as the fabulous, which will actually bird the day before. I've got these sort of in the wrong order chronologically because of how we did it last year because of weather, is the Carpish Tunnel area and the famous Patty Trail. This area has recently been impacted by a massive increase of growing of flowers. But there's still some good forest fragments around, and we spend a very nice day there, and I'm sure we'll spend another nice day there this year, finding birds like the very special yellow-scarfed tanager, one of the most beautiful tanagers, I think, that is out there, a Peruvian endemic. Slightly less attractive, but no less endemic. The broader endemic we should find in this area, and we also find the endemic Huánuco form, which perhaps should be split as a different species of violet-throated star frontlet. This subspecies is just in this area, and this area, the cloud forests here hold good numbers of more widespread Andean birds that we should see while we're there. Things like golden-headed quetzal, white-collared jay, and the ever popular grey-breasted mountain toucan, as well as larger flocks of tanagers, including birds like grass-green tanager and moustache flower piercer. So when we've spent a couple of days in this area, hopefully seen all the important birds and a whole bunch of other good birds, where we'll move um, southwards and up in elevation. And we drive up through a rain shadow valley where we'll look for the Rufous-backed Inca finch. The genus Inca Spiza is endemic to Peru, and the center of endemism of them, the 5 species, is in northern Peru, but there are 2 species available on this tour. The Rufous-backed is the first one we will look for as we drive up this arid valley. And then we come up and finish the day up on the shores of Lake Junin. Lake Junin is a very large lake in the middle of the Andes, in a flat basin in the middle of the Andes, very close to the source of the Amazon, the glaciers that form the source of the Amazon. And we will spend a day and a half birding around here. One of the main target birds here is the Junin black rail. So some people consider this the Junin rail, an endemic species. Others just consider it a subspecies of black rail, but it is a very beautiful bird, and there's a local guide who has kind of sussed them out, and so we will spend some time with him and hopefully get views like this of this fabulous little bird that was virtually unknown till very recently. It was known from only a couple of specimens. The original specimen was found by an ornithologist stuffed in a local restaurant. And it only occurs in the reed beds round Lake Junin. The area where we're looking for the Junin rail, we will also find birds like Chilean flamingo and Puna snipe. Plumbeous rails will be much more common than the Junin rail and will be quite visible and vocal. We should see a variety of ducks, including the rather fabulous crested duck. Oops, sorry, I got another Puna snipe for some reason. Then the next morning, we will head out very early. Because the lake's so large, it tends to generate its own weather. And in the afternoon, it becomes quite windy. And so if you want to go out onto the lake, you need to go very early morning. So we go out onto the lake just after dawn, where it's still, so very still waters, very beautiful, still quite cold. And we'll head out onto the lake. And it's quite shallow for quite a long way out. And we'll head out past the reed beds. And our main target out here is to look for the endemic Junin Grebe. This is a critically threatened endemic confined to this lake. It's flightless, and so it's totally dependent on this one lake, and it occurs in the deeper water in the center of the lake. Anyone who ever tells you they saw one from shore is I'm probably not right, because there is the very similar silvery grebe here. Here are the 2. And silvery grebe is much more common than Junin grebe. It occurs much closer to the shore. Obviously, the Junin grebes do come to the shoreline in the breeding season, but they come to only a couple of areas on the very far edge of very wide reed beds. So really, to see the Junin grebe, you have to head out onto the lake in a boat in the early morning, and we get out into the deeper water a couple of kilometers offshore and usually get nice views of this very special bird. While we're out there, we will also see white tufted grebes and Andean gulls. And quite often at the time of year we're out there, there are many Wilson's phalaropes out there as well. Coming back to shore, we'll bird the grasslands round the lake. These are open puna habitats, quite dry. We'll find things like ornate tinamou. This is the northern subspecies Branicae. The localized Junin canastero, a very attractive bird and quite localized. Buff-breasted earth creeper, so quite a lot of brown terrestrial birds because there are very few bushes and things. Another nice one, Peru endemic, is dark-winged myna we should look for, and another endemic where we do find patches of flowering bushes as the fabulous endemic black-breasted hill star. There are more widespread species around here as well, such as horned owl, recently split from great horned owl. It used to be called Magellanic horned owl for a bit, but now generally called less horned owl. Then from Junin, we're going to drop back down in elevation, and we're going to go down onto the eastern slopes and eastern foothills of the Andes, down near a town called La Merced, where we get into this very nice sort of subtropical lower cloud forest area. We spend a day birding in an area there around a local, in the forest above a local coffee plantation. To get up the tracks there, we jump in the back of the pickup truck of the gentleman who owns the coffee plantation, and he can whiz us up to higher elevations and things. But special birds here are things like cerulean cap manakin, absolutely delightful little bird, and the fabulous creamy-bellied Antwren. We'll also stay up here at night and do a bit of night birding, where we may well see Rufous-browed owl. Last year we were very lucky in seeing a couple of rufescent screech owls, a normal plumaged one, and the much rarer, really rufescent one. We had this very, very close indeed. Over the next couple of nights, we'll then move down in elevation to another area where we'll also do quite a lot of owling, especially looking for foothill screech owl. I unfortunately don't have a picture of foothill screech owl, but another bird we could see in the area is buff-fronted owl, which is one of my all-time favorites. These lower elevation areas have some big rivers where we may find birds like fasciated tiger heron. These are classic Andean foothill birds, and striped-chested Antwren, another Andean foothill bird. We're now near the town of Villarica, dropping down to about 1,000 meters in elevation now. And there is a chance now, there is an undescribed wood quail, which we're going to make an attempt to look for on this year's tour. We've made a slight change in the itinerary to include that, because it is being seen occasionally. Hasn't yet been described, but it's definitely a new species awaiting description. We also last year were lucky to find a couple of foothill Alania, quite a rare, patchily distributed bird along the eastern foothills from Colombia, Ecuador. It was first described in Ecuador not very many years ago, and it was a small isolated population in Central Peru in this area. We're looking for some coffee plantation areas for that. And then we head to the town of Satipo. This will be the lowest elevation area, and we bird up the famous Satipo Valley above the town over the next 3 days. This is an absolutely fabulous valley, taking us from the Amazon lowlands up beside the Satipo River, right up to the Puna zone. And the road itself is pretty quiet. And so we spend basically 3 days birding our way along this road, which has odd vehicles, but very few really. And the road provides amazing birding access into the forest. At the lowest elevations, we start off with real lowland Amazonian birds, things like black-capped Donocobius. We can find birds like Amazonian umbrella bird and tanagers that we're familiar with from the lowlands, bay-headed tanager and the fabulous paradise tanager. As we move up into the foothills slightly, we find birds like lanceolated monklet. And then as we go a little higher, we get more widespread birds like Andean cock of the rock and montane solitary eagle. And then getting up into the true cloud forest, we have classic cloud forest birds like sword-billed hummingbird and masked trogon. The road continues up, and we just bird our way along. And when we get up into this kind of area, this is where we find a number of the special endemics. We've got some very localized tapaculos. We've got some very localized antpitters that we'll look for. Unfortunately, last year, I was hopefully doing my job and helping people see the birds, so I didn't get photos of those birds. But we will look for Junin antpitter, Oxapampa antpitter, and various endemic tapaculos along this stretch of the road. The stream here or the rivers here are amazingly beautiful and have fabulous birds like white-capped dipper and the sought-after torrent duck. Here's a male. This was photographed on the tour last year, And here's the female in the same area. At mid elevations, we find the very localized endemic eye-ringed thistletail. We had a lovely cooperative individual last year one of our lunch stops, and the very beautiful fire-throated metaltail. That this is a female, so it doesn't quite have the fire throat, but it is another nice hummingbird from these high elevation elfin forests right at the boundary between the elfin forests and the Puna zone. Along with some more widespread Andean species like bulb-bellied woodpecker, but here of the very localized pectoralis subspecies. We get up into the Andes itself near the town of Concepcion after we've finished going up the Satipo Road for 3 days. We drop down into another valley that's to the south of the Satipo Valley, which is the Mantaro Valley, which has its own endemics. This is home to the endemic black spectacled brushfinch, as well as an endemic thornbird, an endemic spinetail, and an endemic wren. And so we will look for those one morning before we then head up to some higher elevation passes near Abra Huaytapallana. So we're getting up to sort of 4,600 meters elevation here, and we'll take it slowly and have a wander about and see some high Andean birds. Birds we might find up here include the fabulous stripe-headed antpitter, one of the most confiding and sort of open habitats antpitters, as well as striated earth creeper, white-winged synclodes, etc. From there, we will head over to the area above, on the top of the Western Andes, basically, the top of the Western Andes, not far from Lake Junin again. And the scenery up here is absolutely marvelous. This will be the highest elevation we reach on the tour. And these upland bogs, called bofedales in Spanish, these peat bogs, are home to a couple of very special birds. We'll spend some time here looking for the absolutely fabulous diadem sandpiper plover, one of my all-time favorite waders. Amazingly cryptic. It looks bright and easy to see, but it can be amazingly cryptic in that habitat and takes a while to find. There's also the critically threatened white-bellied synclodes, only a couple of hundred of these birds probably on the planet. And they live in these high-altitude bogs in small family groups, and it takes a little while to find the group, but then hopefully we get good views of this very special bird. As we drop down the Santa Eulalia Valley, heading down now from these highest elevations towards Lima, we start getting areas with patches of polylepis forest. And the polylepis forest here holds a suite of new birds for us, but one of the big targets here is the white-cheeked cotinga. It's not an easy bird. It's in its own genus. It's virtually silent. Most of the time, it does tend to sit up a little bit when the sun just first hits the slopes, but it can be a tricky bird to find. Last year, it gave us a complete run around, but we were very happy when we finally cracked it. And just as we were about to leave, having walked up and down that road several times, I said, come on, we'll give it 5 more minutes. And we saw one in flight and managed to get scope views for everyone of a very special bird. So that was nice. Another bird found in the area is the black metaltail. This is another Peruvian endemic. One of the widest ranging Peruvian endemics, actually. It goes right down to nearly the border with Chile and up to northern Peru, but it is Peruvian endemic, black metaltail. And then as we drop further down, we get into more arid habitats at lower elevations, where we may pick up birds like great Inca finch, which is the second of the Inca finches on the tour, which is endemic again and confined to those lower elevation montane habitats on the west slope of the Andes. As we get right down to the bottom, we may pick up some of the lowland birds like Peruvian thickney and the desert coastal myna. And if we're very lucky, we may get a little bit of time to look at the sea, where we could pick up some of the seabirds, such as Peruvian pelican. Here is so last year on the first tour we've run on this itinerary, we got 467 species recorded, and there are the kind of numbers. So nine antpitters and nine tapaculos. I think the tapaculos were mostly seen. The antpitters, all but one was seen, I think. Tapaculos, there may have been two that were only heard. We had a bit of bad luck with weather. It had been a very dry year last year, record-breaking drought in the Amazon lowlands, and that fed up into those eastern areas. And so we found it very tricky going in a couple of places. Birds were very quiet, the forest was very crunchy, and birds were obviously very stressed by the drought and just not responding or calling themselves. But yeah, so we've moved the tour a little bit later this year to try and counteract that, though it was an anomalous year. So hopefully we won't have that again. But you can see amazing numbers, 42 species of tanager, etc. And so this tour is now being offered both this year and next year. This year, they very kindly decided there should be a special price on it. So there's currently a special price on this tour. So book up. There are some spaces available. I'll be guiding this year's from the 15th to the 30th of November. And then next year, you'll have the pleasure, if you want to go in 2026, of Adam's company, which he's another great leader. I've been privileged to work with him a couple of times and absolutely fabulous. So please do come along. And if you fancy any other tours with me, here's a little list of some of the other ones that have still got space on that I'll be guiding over the next 2 years. And I think I've gone through that quite quickly, but I hope I've given you an idea of what Central Peru is about, and encourage you to perhaps think about visiting this amazing area with this incredible number of endemic birds and questions. Hello, Dan.
Sorry, was just turning my camera and my microphone on. Rob, thank you so very much for sharing your experience with us. Honestly, I am just about ready to book my own flights to get over to Peru. What an absolutely brilliant birding destination. As you say, not necessarily the most speciose destination in the world, but certainly in terms of destinations as far as endemics go, probably one of the best anywhere in South America. So thank you again for sharing your incredible knowledge and experience in Peru with us. You really are our South American expert in certainly Peruvian expert. And your images are just absolutely spectacular. So thank you again. We do have some opportunity for questions if anyone would like. We do have a few questions that are coming in. If you would like to ask any questions, Rob will be answering questions live this evening. So please fire those questions into the Q&A box and we'll work through them slowly. So the first question is from Catherine Carroll. Good evening, Catherine. She asks, what will the weather be like in November?
So it should, that's the sort of transition from dry season to wet season. And so that's the perfect time to go, because most of these Andean birds sing more as you go into the wet season. It does mean you likely get some rain. Last year we had one morning of quite heavy rain for a couple of hours, on and off. We found a very nice little shelter to stand under and have our breakfast. We set up the table, had some breakfast, and birded in the gaps. And it went on for about 2 hours, and then it stopped. And we had absolutely one of our best days of the whole tour. So we will likely get some rain, but generally it will be clear and sunny. We had some amazing weather conditions for photography and things last year, with odd bits of rain. But yeah, and it shouldn't
Very
be
good.
too cold. Up high in November. One of the things is if you go much earlier. So the first time I ever went to Lake Junin, I went in July with some friends, and it had been -15 the night before, and you sit in an aluminium boat, and it was very cold. Last year, it had only just got down to about freezing, and fortunately, the guy who runs the boat trips for us now has got some blankets to put on the seats as well because 15 degrees C aluminium was pretty chilly.
Rob was mentioning I had the opportunity to do some birding with Rob a few weeks ago on a sub-Antarctic cruise, and Rob was telling me that very same story that eventually they found some newspapers and they lay the newspapers on the seat just to take the edge off that early morning boat trip. But you did get to see the Junin Grebe, so
Yeah.
all worth it in the end. Perfect. Ian then has a question. Are there any seed snipe possible on this particular tour?
Yes, gray-bellied sea snipe is probable. We don't probably won't get leased because we don't have enough time in the lowlands on the west coast. But if anyone wanted to see that, you could easily do it before or after near Lima. We could arrange something through TaylorMade or Birding Direct or something. But yeah, so probably just grey-breasted.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. And then finally, Julie asks, what kind of animals are possible in Central Peru? Are there any mammals that are possible on this particular itinerary?
Yeah, it's not great for mammals, but you'll certainly see vicuñas, the wild camelid, the alpaca, the wild version of the alpaca, basically. You'll see both alpacas and llamas. Last year we saw taruca, which is an ant, or the Andean huemul is its other name. It's a deer. We also saw, did we see? I think we saw some. Yeah, we had howler monkeys. I think we heard howler monkeys, and we saw a couple of monkeys in the lowlands areas, but the sort of more commons, I think it was a spider monkey, a squirrel monkey, and a capuchin. Um, but I mean, there are things like Andean bear is possible, but these are unlikely. Um,
Perfect. Thanks so much, Rob. It certainly does seem to be one of those really sort of hot birding tours in South America at the moment. I don't know many destinations where you have a realistic chance of seeing an undescribed species. So,
yeah.
certainly a really, really exciting destination. And as more of Peru opens up, and as we start traveling to these regions more, certainly I'm sure there will be further discoveries and opportunities for many exciting species along the way. Just as one final added note from my side, and some very, very exciting news, we are thrilled to announce that our 2027 tour calendar has been released as of today. All of our 2027 scheduled departure tours will now appear on the website. Bookings, of course, are still open for 2025 and 2026 tours. But all of our scheduled tours, including our Central Peru departure, are available on our website up until the end of 2027 as of today. I do just have one final question for you, Rob,
Yeah.
coming through in the chat box. Carol Shapiro asks, is it possible to combine Central Peru with either northern or southern Peru? Maybe you can just speak on the possibility of running tailor-made tours or birding direct tours on either side and extending one of these scheduled tour itineraries.
Absolutely. You could do either of those on the front of this tour. I wouldn't do it after because you'd be in December then, and you would be getting a little bit too much risk of rain in both central and southern because you're closer to the Amazon. It'd just be pushing it a bit later. So I would do it before, and it'd be a very good time to do both northern and southern Peru, and you could, yeah, do. I don't think this fits exactly with the scheduled tours, and I know northern Peru certainly is. Well, I know it doesn't fit with either of the scheduled tours for this year. Northern Peru is full, and the southern Peru tour currently is going in May, June this year. Um, but you could certainly have a customized itinerary. In fact, last year, several people we went on and did a 10-day kind of extension up near Iquitos in the Amazon lowlands up there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rob. And just one final question there. Elizabeth asks, how does the altitude compare to the sort of central northern Ecuador route in and around Quito?
So the Quito route, I guess, gets up to about 4,000 meters at Papiacta Pass, something like that. If I remember rightly, it's a long time since I lived there. So this is more, but the high points come after you've had nearly 2 weeks of acclimatizing. So, I mean, no one had any problems with it last year. Um, so there were a few places where we walked slowly, but everyone felt okay, and so
Brilliant. Rob, I think you are then free after this. So thank you so very much for sharing your experience with us. You really are just a fountain of knowledge when it comes to Peru. And again, your photography is just absolutely brilliant. So very exciting to see so many species that I've never even dreamt of.
well,
And
come
I hope
along.
that um, I one day get to bird Peru with you. I think this tour is certainly going to be a hot favorite after you featured it so brilliantly. So thank you
That'd
very
be
much. And to all of our attendees this evening, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join this next episode of the Dream Destination series. Remember to follow our emails and to receive where you'll receive updates on our upcoming Dream Destination episodes. Next, we'll be showcasing Madagascar at the end of March, and I will be hosting that webinar again. Thank you all very, very much. Rob, thank you again, and have a wonderful day further.
Thank you.